The scent of sizzling meat hung thick in the warm summer air, curling over the wooden fence and drifting down the quiet suburban street. The rich aroma of slow-cooked ribs and seared steak mingled with the laughter of friends gathered in Jake's backyard, their voices rising and falling over the crackling fire. He stood by the grill, flipping a rack of ribs with practiced ease, beer in one hand, tongs in the other, savoring the moment. This was tradition, his annual summer barbecue, the one event everyone looked forward to. The unmistakable screech of a gate swinging open cut through the laughter like a blade. A hush settled over the group as they turned toward the intruder. There she stood, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin, judgmental line, eyes squinting against the smoke like it personally offended her. Karen, the neighborhood watchdog, the self-proclaimed enforcer of morality, decency, and, apparently, air quality. "Excuse me," she barked, stepping forward with the stiff, aggressive stride of someone who had already decided they were the hero of the story. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Jake sighed. He'd been expecting this. Karen always found a reason to complain, whether it was about kids playing too loudly, someone parking too close to her driveway, or her newest obsession, the environment. He set down his beer and turned to face her with forced politeness. "Grilling," he said simply, motioning to the open flame as if she might not have noticed. Karen made a dramatic show of waving a hand in front of her face, coughing as if she had just inhaled a toxic cloud. "This is ridiculous. The amount of smoke you're producing is obscene. You're poisoning the air." Someone snickered behind him, probably Chris, who had already made bets earlier about how long it would take before Karen showed up. Jake kept his expression neutral. "Karen, it's a barbecue. Outside. In my own yard. You're creating air pollution," she snapped. "You're contributing to climate change with this reckless display of—" She gestured wildly at the grill, her voice rising. "Unnecessary carbon emissions. Do you even care about the environment?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, biting back a sharp response. "I recycle. I carpool when I can. But I'm not going to feel guilty for cooking dinner." Karen's nostrils flared. "I knew you were one of those people," she muttered, shaking her head in disgust. "You think your right to char a few slabs of meat is more important than the health of the planet." Typical. Chris stepped forward, smirking. "You know what else contributes to pollution? That gas-guzzling SUV you drive." Karen whirled around, scandalized. "That is completely different," she huffed. "Some of us have responsibilities, unlike you freeloaders." Jake exhaled through his nose. He didn't want a scene, especially not in the middle of what was supposed to be a good night. He tried a different approach. "Look, Karen, if the smoke is bothering you, I can move the grill a little farther from the fence." But she wasn't here for a compromise. She was here to win. "No," she said firmly. "You need to put that fire out. Now." The demand hung in the air, absurd in its audacity. A few of Jake's guests exchanged incredulous glances. Someone muttered under their breath. He tightened his grip on the tongs, resisting the urge to snap back. "I'm not shutting down my barbecue because you don't like it," he said, his voice cool. "You're welcome to head back inside if the smoke bothers you." Karen's face darkened. "Oh, I see. You think you're entitled to do whatever you want, regardless of how it affects others. That's exactly the problem with people like you." She pulled out her phone. "If you refuse to act like a responsible neighbor, I'll have to take matters into my own hands." Jake watched as she opened the camera, angling the phone to capture the rising smoke against the evening sky. "I am documenting this hazardous activity," she announced, as if she were breaking a major investigative story. "People need to see the kind of reckless, selfish behavior that's destroying our world." "Are you serious?" Jake asked, half laughing. Karen ignored him, turning slightly to get a better shot. "I'm posting this online. People need to know what's happening in their own communities." Chris muttered, "Oh yeah, this is definitely going viral." A few of Jake's friends pulled out their own phones, recording Karen in return. She either didn't notice or didn't care, too busy narrating her version of events. "This man, this asterisk man," she said dramatically, is endangering the neighborhood with dangerous air pollutants. He refuses to stop, despite being asked politely to consider the health of his community. Jake rubbed his temple, patience thinning. Karen, it's a grill. You're acting like I'm setting tire fires in the street. But she was already dialing. He watched, stunned, as she pressed the phone to her ear. Yes, hello? I'd like to report an environmental violation. A pause. Yes, my neighbor is deliberately creating a hazardous amount of smoke. It's affecting the entire block. I'm concerned for public health. Chris burst out laughing. You called the cops over a barbecue? Jake felt the tension coil in his chest. This wasn't just another petty complaint. Karen was escalating. She turned away, lowering her voice as she continued speaking into the phone. A few people shifted uncomfortably. The night had taken a turn from amusing to absurd. Jake swallowed the urge to argue. He knew how this worked. People like Karen thrived on pushing boundaries, forcing you into a reaction, waiting for you to slip up so they could feel justified. But he wasn't about to let her win. He turned back to the grill, flipping the ribs with a deliberate, unbothered motion, letting the scent of smoky, seasoned meat fill the air once more. Karen's voice sharpened behind him. That's right, she said, practically vibrating with self-righteous satisfaction. Send someone immediately. The next morning, Jake stepped outside, coffee in hand, and found the first sign that Karen wasn't done. Stapled to the neighborhood bulletin board and taped to several street lamps were freshly printed flyers. In bold, capitalized letters, they read, "Stop barbecue pollution. Protect our air." Below the headline was a blurry, unflattering screenshot from Karen's video, showing smoke rising from Jake's grill. At the bottom, a call to action: report air quality violations. Take a stand against reckless polluters in our community. Jake snorted. This was next-level Karen behavior. A simple complaint wasn't enough. She wanted a movement. Chris arrived a few minutes later, coffee cup in one hand, phone in the other. Dude, have you seen this? He held up his screen. Karen's Facebook group. * clean air. Safe neighborhoods star. Jake peered at the post. There it was, Karen's rant, accompanied by the same smoke-filled photo. She had tagged the city council, the local environmental board, and even a few activist groups. The comments were a mix of clueless support and sarcastic pushback from other neighbors who had clearly had enough of her antics. Dude, look at this one, Chris said, scrolling. Some guy named Mark commented, "Lady, it's a barbecue, not an oil refinery." Jake shook his head, more amused than angry. She's really pushing this. Oh, it gets better, Chris said. Someone in the HOA group chat said she filed a formal complaint against you. That caught Jake's attention. With who? The city, Chris replied. She's trying to say your smoke emissions are a violation of air quality regulations. Wants them to fine you. Jake took a slow sip of his coffee, staring at the flyer again. She really thinks she can ban barbecues. She doesn't care about the smoke, Chris said. She cares about control. Later that afternoon, a white city truck rolled to a stop in front of Jake's house. A man in a county-issued polo stepped out, clipboard in hand. Karen was already outside, standing at the edge of her driveway with her arms folded, watching smugly as he approached. Afternoon, the inspector said. We received a complaint about air quality violations. Jake exhaled, keeping his expression neutral. Let me guess. Karen? The inspector glanced at his notes but didn't confirm. Just need to do a quick check, sir. Nothing personal. Jake led him to the backyard, where the grill sat, cold and untouched since last night. The inspector looked around, jotting a few notes before tucking the pen behind his ear. Yeah, I figured, he said, scratching his head. This isn't a violation. Outdoor grilling is completely legal unless you're burning hazardous materials, which, he gestured to the clean grill. You're obviously not. Jake smirked. So I'm free to continue ruining the environment with delicious smoked meats? The inspector chuckled. You're in the clear. He lowered his voice. Between us, you're not the first neighbor she's filed complaints against. Jake raised an eyebrow. That's so? The man nodded. Last month, she tried to report someone for excessive leaf blower usage. Before that, she claimed a dog was barking aggressively at her, even though the owner had video proof the dog was asleep inside the house. He sighed. We check them out because we have to. But, yeah. Jake shook his head, suppressing a laugh. Well, thanks for coming by. As the inspector walked back to his truck, Karen rushed over, her expression shifting from smug to impatient. Well? She demanded. No violation, the inspector said flatly. Karen gasped. But the smoke was from a legal barbecue, he cut in. Nothing we can do, she sputtered. But this is an environmental hazard. Surely there must be some rule against. The inspector climbed into his truck. Have a nice day, ma'am. Karen stood there, frozen, as the vehicle pulled away. Slowly, she turned toward Jake, eyes narrowing. You think this is funny, don't you? Jake took a long sip of his drink, savoring the moment. A little. Karen's jaw tightened. You haven't won. That was the moment Jake knew she wasn't going to let this go. The next morning, the neighborhood group chat exploded with messages. Someone had spotted Karen handing out petitions. Others had received direct messages from her, asking them to join the fight against smoke pollution. She even tried to convince the HOA board to issue a new rule banning charcoal grilling. Jake wasn't worried, yet the HOA had never entertained her more ridiculous demands before. But that didn't mean she wouldn't keep trying. 2 days later, another notice arrived in Jake's mailbox. Official city letterhead. He unfolded it and scanned the contents. It wasn't a fine. Not yet. But it was a formal air quality complaint, the next step in Karen's crusade. If the city received additional complaints, they would be obligated to investigate further. Jake ran a hand through his hair. She wasn't just being annoying anymore. She was playing the long game. That night, he noticed her in her yard, talking to someone. A local news reporter. Chris sent him a text. Bro. Karen called the news. She's doing an interview. Asterisk asterisk. Jake exhaled through his nose, watching from his window as Karen gestured animatedly, the reporter nodding along. She wasn't going to stop, so neither was he. Jake watched the news segment with a mix of disbelief and amusement. Karen had outdone herself. Standing in front of her pristine white picket fence, she looked directly into the camera with the solemnity of someone exposing a grand conspiracy. Our community is under attack, she declared, shaking her head. People like my neighbor are filling our air with toxic smoke, harming our environment, and endangering our health. It's time we take a stand. The footage cut to a shaky zoom-in of Jake's backyard from the night of the barbecue. Smoke curled into the evening sky, but instead of the lively laughter and sizzling food, Karen's dramatic narration painted a dire picture. This is what we're dealing with, pollution at an unimaginable scale. Chris nearly fell off the couch laughing. Asterisk unimaginable scale asterisk? What is this, a coal plant? Jake turned off the TV and leaned back. Karen wasn't just ranting on social media anymore. She was building a campaign. The city had already sent a warning. If she got enough traction, who knew what she could pull off? But if Karen wanted a war, she had underestimated her opponent. Jake started where Karen had on social media. He scrolled through her Facebook group, gathering screenshots of her most ridiculous claims. Then he dug deeper. Karen loved to present herself as an eco-warrior, but it didn't take much effort to find her contradictions. There were photos from an HOA barbecue she attended last year. Smiling in front of a giant, smoky grill, a burger in hand. A neighbor posted about her demanding that their gardener use a gas-powered leaf blower instead of a quieter. Electric one because the battery ones don't work as well. And the best discovery of all. A video of her hosting a backyard bonfire, complete with plastic cups, disposable plates, and a roaring flame that put Jake's little barbecue to shame. Chris whistled as he read through the findings. She's not just a hypocrite. She's a walking contradiction. Jake grinned. And she wants attention? Let's give her some. That night, he uploaded a video. It started with Karen's dramatic news interview, spliced together with clips of her at the HOA barbecue, her bonfire blazing, and her demanding gas-powered tools. The captions wrote themselves. Karen's war on smoke, unless it's hers. Within hours, the video started circulating. Neighbors commented. Strangers laughed. Even some of Karen's former supporters started asking questions. The real victory came when someone reposted it to a popular local Facebook group. By morning, the comment section had exploded. Asterisk. Wait. Wasn't she the one throwing a bonfire last summer? Asterisk. Asterisk. So backyard grills are the problem, but she's fine roasting marshmallows? Asterisk. Asterisk. Classic Karen. Asterisk. The next day, Karen stormed into the HOA meeting, eyes blazing. Jake wasn't a member, but Chris had a connection and got the whole thing on video. I demand this defamation be taken down. Karen fumed, gripping the back of a chair like she was ready to launch it. I have been harassed, slandered, and mocked simply for trying to protect this community. One of the board members cleared his throat. Karen, you were the one who went to the news first. She turned to him, incredulous. And? That's completely different. Another member adjusted her glasses. Is it? Because it looks like you made yourself the center of this. Karen's face turned a dangerous shade of red. That video is misleading. My bonfire was for a cause. Jake, watching from his phone, burst out laughing. The HOA ultimately ruled that Karen's campaign against backyard grilling wasn't something they would pursue. But the damage to her reputation had already been done. The best part? The final blow came from an unexpected source. One of Karen's former Facebook supporters, clearly embarrassed by how far things had gone, posted a sarcastic meme of her in front of the bonfire with the caption, "Save the planet, unless it's for s'mores." It went viral. By the end of the week, Karen's once thriving Facebook group was a ghost town, flooded with mocking comments and abandoned by its members. Chris sent Jake a text. Victory tastes like ribs. Jake just smiled. The next barbecue was already in the works. Karen had always been the type who thrived on control. But now, the reins had slipped from her hands, and she was grasping at air. The once righteous fire behind her crusade had been smothered, leaving behind nothing but the bitter taste of public humiliation. And yet, she refused to let it die. Jake wasn't surprised when she made one last desperate move. The city council meeting was packed. Normally, these gatherings were half empty, attended only by retirees and a handful of concerned citizens. But tonight was different. Karen had made sure of it. She had sent out emails, made calls, and plastered the neighborhood with notices urging people to stand against air pollution. Jake had almost ignored it. Almost. But Chris had convinced him otherwise. She's not going to stop unless she's shut down publicly, Chris had said. You need to be there. So here he was, sitting near the back, arms crossed, as Karen marched up to the microphone, head held high like a politician about to deliver a campaign-defining speech. She took a deep breath, scanned the room, then launched into her performance. Our neighborhood is at risk, she declared, her voice carrying through the chamber. We face an unseen danger, one that threatens our air, our health, and our quality of life. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. And yet, some refuse to acknowledge the damage they are causing. I stand before you today to demand action. To demand that this council put an end to the reckless pollution that is poisoning our community. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some nodded. Others looked skeptical. Jake remained still, watching. Karen straightened. All I ask for is a simple, reasonable restriction on excessive outdoor grilling. A small change that would improve air quality for everyone. The mayor, a graying man who had likely seen his fair share of neighborhood disputes, leaned forward. Ms. Harding, our office has reviewed your complaint. Karen smiled expectantly, waiting for the validation she craved. We found no legal basis for banning barbecues. The smile cracked. Excuse me? The regulations are clear, the mayor continued. Personal grilling is well within residential rights. We investigated. And there is no evidence of excessive pollution coming from Mr. Dawson's property. A ripple of chuckles spread through the room. Karen's lips tightened. This isn't just about one person, she said sharply. It's about setting a precedent. Do you want to wait until the air quality does become a problem? Until we're choking on smoke every weekend? A woman in the front row raised an eyebrow. Karen, honey, you've been lighting up your fire pit for years. Should we ban those too? Laughter erupted. Karen's composure cracked further. That is completely different, she snapped. The mayor sighed, rubbing his temples. Ms. Harding, we appreciate your concerns, but this matter is closed. There will be no restrictions on barbecues. Karen's breath hitched. She turned toward the audience, searching for support, but found only smirks and shaking heads. The room wasn't with her. They were against her. And then someone spoke. Hey Karen, how's your Facebook group doing? It was Chris. He leaned against the back wall, grinning. The room erupted in laughter again. Someone clapped. Karen's face burned. She turned on her heel and stormed out, the echoes of her defeat ringing in her ears. Jake exhaled, feeling the tension dissolve from his chest. It was over. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood had returned to normal. Karen had gone quiet. Her Facebook group had been deleted. Her yard no longer littered with protest signs. She still sent the occasional passive-aggressive glare across the fence, but she had lost her power. Jake fired up the grill, the smell of hickory-smoked ribs filling the air. Friends and neighbors gathered, drinks in hand, laughter spilling into the evening sky. Chris nudged him. You should send her an invite. Jake smirked. Tempting. Instead, he grabbed a plate, piled it high with ribs, and handed it to a kid from down the street. Take this to Karen's porch, he said. The kid frowned. Won't she just throw it away? Jake shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the laughter continued. The battle was won, but the best revenge? That was simply living well and making sure the whole neighborhood could smell it.